And joining us today, we got our good friend Eric Snodgrass from Nutrien on to talk weather with us. And Eric, it's great to have you back on the show. How are you, man?
Doing pretty good. Getting finally some cooler fall weather around here. Although we're going to go back up into the 60s here in Illinois over the weekend. So it was just a shot at cold air, but there's a frost on my lawn out there this morning.
I was gonna say, we've had some pretty cold temperatures here this week. A lot of frost and freezes as far south as Texas here. I know this week, and really just kind of a shot of cold weather. I know. Um, I had a couple people tell me like, "What happened to fall? We just skipped right to winter," but not completely the case. But I know after all the rains last week, this cold weather, the hard frost and freezes has at least given us an opportunity to get back into the fields and try to wrap up some field work.
Yeah, we still have some open windows across much of the central United States, all the way down to the southeast. We've got probably another 5 days of just dry weather, and that's good because around here where I'm from, we got a lot of crops still to harvest. And in fact, we were joking the other day over at the Andersons. They normally have my kids call it the corn cano, the big pile of corn outside, and it's not there yet. I'm like, that's because all the corn's still, on farm storage right now. They got to get it out, and they're going to be working hard the next several days to do that.
Yeah, and I know there was some talk, maybe some worry about slow drainage in parts of the eastern Corn Belt with this cold weather. But I think overall we're looking at a pretty good window, as you mentioned here. And now, looking ahead, obviously we don't want to talk winter, but we're going to start thinking about it and just start thinking about some of these patterns here the next couple of months. And walk us through some of the latest you're hearing as to what we could see moving into the winter months here across the country when it comes to precipitation and temperatures, etc.
Yeah, in the near term, we still got a very volatile pattern. So don't expect November to be a certain way. It's just gonna up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's because the North Pacific is just loaded with what we call high momentum jet stream flow. It's not blocked, it's screaming through the Gulf of Alaska. So we get the tail end of that. And that gives us a system every, I don't know, maybe one per week or so. And they come through and they get a little disrupted. But when you get into December, January, February, we just keep thinking longer term. Most of the long range forecasts are all predicated on this La Nina continue to develop. And what La Ninas tend to do, 6 out of 10 years, they tend to favor above normal temperatures from California through Texas over to South Carolina. They tend to favor wet and cold conditions from the Pacific Northwest through the northern plains into the Midwest. So it tends to just split the country: cold and wet north, warm and dry south. And that's, like I said, 6 and 10 years, you get a La Nina like the one that's developing now. We tend to see that pattern. So you're not going to find a long range forecast that's going to deviate from that, because we know La Ninas are good seasonal predictors. But I think about it compared to last year. I mean, last year the biggest concern was there was a developing La Nina that didn't put snow down to the northern plains, and because of that, we had a drought all summer long because that never was corrected. I don't see that repeating this year. And unlike last year, where we really only had one big cold air outbreak in February, that's one that hit Texas real hard. I think we should just prepare for what I would call more normal winter routine cold weather coming through. And to be honest, that's all good news for ag across the Midwest of the United States. You may not like it to go outside, but our fields are going to like it. That's for sure.
I was going to say, we have seen some good replenishing rains across the northern plains and the upper Midwest here as we've gone through the fall. And that's really helped us get back to at least a neutral platform here when it comes to drought. But a normal winter would hopefully help set us up very well as we go into next spring, Eric.
Yeah, you're right. And what we really want to see is I'd probably like to see about four really hard freezes. I'm talking where we get the top 10 inches of the soil way down there, maybe close to 10 Fahrenheit. And because that contraction, when they have that, and then the expansion, just it helps with compaction issues, which we've had a lot of since about the wet harvest way back in 2018. We're still correcting some of that. So I think that this is going to be a good thing overall for this upcoming winter. But yeah, you're going to find most of those forecasts really hinging on La Nina at this point.
Going into next week, I know there is some talk of possibly a winter storm of sorts working through the country. Touch on that a little bit. What are you seeing as the latest there?
Yeah, so several weather forecast model runs have been putting this just big cyclone, big winter storm right over like South Dakota. And when that starts to show up in the forecast, what you get is big snows on the backside. Some of those of like put down up to like, I'm not joking, some of the models were putting down like 15 inches of snow in Iowa at one point. And I'm sitting there going, well, we'll pull those rains back because the system that is forecast to be in the Western Corn Belt next like Wednesday, Thursday. Today, it's still sitting over Siberia. Like it's still got to come all the way through the North Pacific, and it's going to change a lot. But what it could do if it does manifest, which the models are still forecasting it to do, is this could give us a late week risk next week of some snow in the northern plains, some wet weather through the Corn Belt. It could give us severe weather in the southern plains through the mid-south. And that's what those big winter storms do this time of year. And when it passes through, it'll clear things out. We'll get some cold air that'll come in behind it. So that'll just be another piece of this up-down cycle we expect to see. And I would just bank on something like that showing up in the forecast once a week, maybe twice a week from now through the beginning of December.
Let's talk South America. And I know that we are starting to shift our attention to their weather and their growing season and how that's going to affect our markets and more here moving forward. And so far, they've had a pretty ideal planting season and planting window in Brazil and Argentina, except maybe a little dryness in parts of southern Brazil and into northern Argentina. Talk about some of the latest you're seeing with the weather setup in South America.
Yeah, so most folks really just watch the planting progress of Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso is the biggest producing state in Brazil. And just for reference, you can fit 5 Iowas inside of Mato Grosso, okay? So what's happened there is that unlike a year ago, where they were having record slow planting progress through October and early November, they're now really, really fast, well ahead of the 5-year average. At one point, they were about 40% ahead of where they were last year, and they're almost done getting that soybean crop in. So much of what happens in South America, especially in Mato Grosso, which is near the Amazon, is how fast does the first crop go in? Because it's very rare that they have such a substantial drought in northern Brazil where it peels back yields in a big way. It's all about the timing of planting. That means that the safrinha crop in Mato Grosso is probably going to go in on time as well, which is mostly a corn and partly a cotton crop. You said it, though. It's southern Brazil we're worried about. And over the next 10 days, from Mato Grosso do Sul through Paraná, through Rio Grande do Sul. Those are the big states that are kind of curl down in southern Brazil. They're dry. They have been dry as of late. Just when rain comes through, it's just not delivering a lot. And there's going to be risk in Uruguay, Paraguay, and probably eastern Argentina for drought development throughout this year. And that's, again, La Niñas tend to favor that. So we're going to watch that carefully. So while northern and central and eastern Brazil may have a decent soybean crop, some of the numbers we've been hearing are pretty big. Where the numbers might peel back is in the southern growing areas. And those states I just mentioned, so Mato Grosso do Sul through Paraná and Rio Grande do Sul, that's about 40% of the growing areas. So we got to keep an eye on that.
Eric, any other big challenges weather-wise that you're watching here as we get into the month of November and head towards the end of 2021?
Yeah, the biggest challenges for me are trying to figure out if the stuff going on in the tropics is going to continue. What I'm talking about, there's not hurricanes, but from the Indian Ocean to the Central Pacific, we got this thing called the MJO. It is avoiding a few places. And if it keeps doing that, we aren't going to see a shift at all in our weather patterns. It's got to start to move around. When that occurs, we could, and it's been a long time since we've had this, we could go into a very rapid and early start to winter in December. And a front-loaded winter is something we've not seen in a long time. So I would just tell folks, be prepared for that. And why I say that is because we all know right now, we've been watching natural gas prices and things like that. Any external demand due to weather just could be a major market story as we go forward.
Well, Eric, I know you share a lot of great information when it comes to weather with your daily newsletter, and I know folks can find that very easily. Sign up for free. We'll post a link on our website. You can check it out. And of course, we appreciate the time as always, and I'm sure we will catch up with you again real soon, Eric. But again, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks.